The fluorescent lights of the subway station flickered with a sterile, humming buzz, casting long, jittery shadows against the tiled walls. It was 11:45 p.m. on a Tuesday. The air smelled of ozone, damp concrete, and the lingering exhaustion of a city that never truly slept. Livia sat on a plastic bench, her posture rigid, her knuckles white as she clutched her phone. On the screen, a text message from her mother glowed like a radioactive warning. "Aunt Martha is asking if your husband is coming." I told her yes. "Do not embarrass us, Livia, not again. Not at your sister's wedding." Livia swallowed hard, feeling the dry lump of anxiety in her throat. There was no husband. There wasn't even a boyfriend. The husband was a defensive lie she had told 6 months ago during a heated Christmas dinner, a desperate fabrication to stop the barrage of pitying looks and questions about why she was 30, a waitress, and alone. She looked at her bank app. Balance, $214 out of $50. That was everything she had to her name until the next pay cycle. "Stupid," she whispered to herself, the sound swallowed by the screech of an approaching train. Stupid, stupid, stupid. She had 48 hours before the wedding in the countryside. She needed a miracle. Or she needed to flee the country. Since a plane ticket was out of her budget, she was trapped. She looked up. Across the platform, standing near a vending machine that seemed to be out of order, was a man. He didn't look like a miracle. He looked like the definition of average, at least at first glance. He wore a slightly worn gray coat, dark jeans, and boots that had seen better days. He was reading a paperback book, his head tilted down, a lock of dark hair falling over his forehead. He wasn't looking at his phone. He was just reading, standing perfectly still amidst the chaos of the late-night commuters. There was something about his stillness that drew Livia in. He seemed anchored, solid in a world that felt like it was spinning out of control for her. A crazy, terrifying idea began to bloom in Livia's chest. It was reckless. It was dangerous. It was absolutely necessary. She stood up, her legs feeling like jelly. She checked her purse. In an envelope, she had $200 in cash, savings she had withdrawn to buy a dress she hadn't bought yet. "It's a business transaction," she told herself. "Just business." She walked across the platform. The sound of her heels clicking on the concrete seemed deafening to her own ears. She stopped 3 feet away from him. "Excuse me?" The man didn't jump. He simply turned a page, marked his spot with a finger, and looked up. Livia's breath hitched. Up close, he wasn't average. His eyes were a startling shade of amber, intelligent and guarded. There was a weariness in them, but also a sharp focus that made her feel like he was reading her, not the book. "Yes?" His voice was deep, calm, and surprisingly polite. Livia felt the blood rush to her face. She held out the envelope. Her hand was shaking. "I know this sounds insane," she started, the words tumbling out fast. "I know you don't know me. I'm Livia. I'm sane, I promise. I'm in a desperate situation." The man raised an eyebrow. He didn't look at the envelope. He looked at her eyes. "Are you in danger?" "No." "Yes, emotional danger," Livia stammered. "My sister is getting married on Friday. My family, they are difficult. I told a lie that I was married to stop them from criticizing my life. If I show up alone, I'll never hear the end of it. They will ruin the weekend for everyone." She took a step closer, thrusting the envelope slightly forward. "This is $200. It's all I have on me. I can give you another 100 when we get back. I just need you to come with me. For 2 days. Friday to Sunday. Pretend to be my husband. You don't have to do anything weird. Just stand there, nod, eat cake, and then leave." The station went silent as the train on the opposite track departed. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. The man looked at the crumpled envelope in her hand. He looked at her frayed coat, her tired eyes, the genuine panic radiating off her. For Leon Marin, the CEO of Marin Tech, a man whose net worth hovered in the billions, a man who had spent the last week hiding in the city to escape the sycophants, board members, and gold diggers who only wanted his signature or his status, this was a novelty. He looked at the $200. To him, that was less than the cost of the bottled water he stocked in his penthouse. But to her, it was clearly everything. She wasn't asking for his status. She didn't know who he was. She was offering her money to him. She was hiring him. "You want to hire me," Leon said slowly, testing the words. "To be your husband?" "Yes," Livia pleaded. "Please, you look decent. You look like someone who could be respectable. I'll pay for your food. I'll pay for the train ticket. Just, please." Leon looked at the approaching headlights of the next train. He had planned to go back to his penthouse tonight, return to the cold, empty luxury of his life. The thought made him feel exhausted. He looked back at Livia. She was holding her breath. "Keep your money," Leon said, closing his book and sliding it into his pocket. Livia's face fell. "Oh, I understand. It was stupid to ask. I'm sorry." "I said keep it," Leon interrupted, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching the corner of his lips. "You'll need it for the train tickets. I'll do it for free, but on one condition." Livia blinked, stunned. "Condition? We do this my way. If I'm going to be your husband, we can't look like strangers. We have 1 hour to get our story straight before we travel. Buy me a coffee and you've got a deal." The train screeched to a halt in front of them, the doors sliding open with a hiss. Livia stared at him, unable to process her luck, or perhaps her doom. "Deal," she whispered. They stepped onto the train together, the gap between their worlds invisible, but vast. The 24-hour diner was bathed in a harsh yellow light, smelling of grease and burnt coffee. Livia sat in the booth, a notepad open in front of her. Leon sat opposite her, his hands wrapped around a mug of black coffee. He seemed out of place, not because of his clothes, but because of the way he carried himself, with an economy of movement that spoke of immense discipline. "Okay," Livia said, clicking her pen nervously. "Name. We need a name. You look like a—" "Mark? Leon," he said simply. He saw no reason to change his first name. It would be easier to react to. "Leon Vane." "Leon Vane," Livia wrote it down. "Okay, Leon, what do you do? We have to keep it simple so you don't get confused. Maybe you work in construction or retail?" Leon took a sip of coffee to hide his amusement. He orchestrated mergers that shifted the global economy. He designed algorithms that predicted market trends. "I'm a consultant," Leon suggested. "It's vague enough. I help small businesses fix their logistics. It sounds boring, so people won't ask too many questions." Livia nodded vigorously. "Perfect. Boring is good. My mother loves boring. It means stability." She looked at him critically. "How did we meet?" "A library," Leon said instantly. The lie came smoothly. "You dropped a stack of books. I helped you pick them up. Our hands touched. Cliché, but effective. Older generations love a romantic cliché." Livia smiled, a genuine, small smile that transformed her face. For a second, the anxiety vanished, revealing a softness that caught Leon off guard. "Okay, the library, 2 years ago?" 18 months, Leon corrected. "A whirlwind romance. We eloped because we couldn't wait. That explains why there was no big wedding for your family to attend." Livia stopped writing and looked at him. "You're good at this." "I watch a lot of movies," Leon lied. In reality, he was good at this because his entire life was a performance. Board meetings, press conferences, charity galas, it was all acting. But this felt different. The stakes here weren't stock prices. They were this woman's dignity. "What about you?" Leon asked, leaning forward. "Tell me about Livia. What do you love? What scares you? Why does that matter?" "Because," Leon said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming serious. "If I am your husband, I need to know how to protect you. I need to know what makes you smile so I can point it out to your mother. I need to know what makes you anxious so I can hold your hand." Livia felt a blush creep up her neck. He was taking this seriously. Too seriously? "I love old maps," she admitted quietly. "I like seeing how the world used to be drawn, even if it was wrong. And I'm scared of failing, of being the disappointment in a family of perfect people." Leon nodded, absorbing the information. "You aren't a disappointment, Livia. You're the only person I've met in this city brave enough to approach a stranger and offer your last dollar for your family's sake. That's not failure. That's loyalty. The air in the diner seemed to shift. For a moment, it wasn't a transaction. It was two lonely people recognizing each other in the noise of the world. "We leave at 6:01 a.m., Livia said, breaking the moment, her voice trembling slightly. "The bus ride is 4 hours. "I'll be there," Leon said. "How do I know you won't run away with my coffee money?" she joked weakly. Leon stood up, placing a $5 bill on the table for the tip, a habit he couldn't break. "Because, Livia, I have a feeling this weekend is going to be far more interesting than anything I had planned." As he walked out into the rainy night, Leon checked his phone. 17 missed calls from his CFO. One text from his assistant. "Sir, the board is panic. Where are you?" He typed a quick reply. "Field research. Do not contact me until Monday." He turned off the phone. For the next 3 days, he wasn't Leon Marin, the billionaire tech mogul. He was Leon Vane, the husband of a waitress who loved old maps. And strangely, he felt freer than he had in years. The bus ride was grueling. The suspension was shot, and the road to the countryside was riddled with potholes. But Leon didn't complain. He sat next to Livia, offering her the window seat. He noticed she fell asleep an hour into the ride, her head lolling uncomfortably. Without thinking, he gently guided her head to rest on his shoulder. She sighed in her sleep and settled against him. The weight of her was grounding. He smelled her shampoo, something cheap, vanilla and lavender, but pleasant. It smelled real. When they arrived at the small town of Serra Verde, the air was crisp and smelled of pine and damp earth. Livia woke up with a start, realizing she had been drooling on the stranger's expensive-looking coat. "I'm so sorry," she gasped, wiping her mouth. "It's fine," Leon said, stretching his stiff arm. "We're here. Game face on." They took a taxi to the family estate. It wasn't a mansion, but it was a large, imposing colonial house that screamed old money, or at least the pretension of it. As they walked up the gravel driveway, Livia's breathing became shallow. She stopped, grabbing Leon's arm. Her grip was tight, painful. "I can't do this," she whispered. "They're going to see right through us. Look at you. You look too calm, and I look like a nervous wreck." Leon turned to her. He took both her hands in his. His hands were warm and rough. He looked her dead in the eye, channeling every ounce of authority he used to command rooms of shark-like investors. "Livia, look at me." She looked up. "You are not a nervous wreck. You are Livia Vane. You are the wife of a man who adores you. We have a life in the city that they don't understand, and that makes us interesting, not inferior. You are not seeking their approval. You are granting them your presence. Do you understand?" His confidence was infectious. It flowed from his hands into hers. She took a deep breath. "Granting them my presence." "Exactly. Now, take my arm." She hooked her arm through his. They walked to the door. It opened before they could knock. A woman stood there, tall, impeccably dressed in stiff linen, with hair sprayed into a helmet of perfection. This was Cecilia, Livia's mother. Her eyes swept over Livia, noting the slightly wrinkled dress, then darted to Leon. She analyzed him like a biological specimen. She looked at his boots, his coat, his face. "So," Cecilia said, her voice dry as dust. "You finally decided to show up. And you brought him." "Hello, Mother," Livia said, her voice shaking only a little. "This is Leon, my husband." Leon stepped forward. He didn't wait for Cecilia to offer her hand. He took it. He didn't squeeze too hard, but he applied just enough pressure to show he wasn't intimidated. "A pleasure to finally meet the woman who raised such a remarkable daughter," Leon said. His tone was smooth, charming, and just deferential enough to disarm her. "Livia talks about your attention to detail all the time." Cecilia blinked. She wasn't used to being charmed, especially not by people she intended to bully. She pulled her hand back. "Well, don't just stand there letting the cold in. The rehearsal dinner starts in 2 hours. I hope you brought a suit, Leon. We don't allow denim at the table." "I brought what was necessary," Leon said, his smile not reaching his eyes as he looked at the mother. They stepped inside. The house was filled with relatives, aunts, cousins, and of course the bride-to-be, Clara. Clara came rushing down the stairs. a vision in white silk. "Livia!" Clara hugged her sister. "You made it!" She pulled back and looked at Leon. Her eyes widened. "And this is the mystery man?" "Hello, Clara," Leon said. "Congratulations." "Wow," Clara whispered to Livia, loud enough for Leon to hear. "He's handsome. I thought you said he was homely but reliable." Livia blushed crimson. I wanted to lower expectations." As they were ushered to their room, a guest room with a single antique queen-sized bed, the reality of the situation crashed down on them. The door clicked shut. They were alone in the heart of the enemy territory. "One bed," Livia hissed, staring at the floral quilt. "Of course. Why didn't I think of that?" "It's fine," Leon said, placing his small duffel bag on the floor. "I can sleep on the floor." "No," Livia said. "The floor is hardwood. You're doing me a favor. We can build a wall of pillows." Leon looked at the bed, then at Livia. He felt a strange pang of desire, not just physical, but a desire to simply lie next to her, to talk to her away from the noise of the world. "We have an hour before dinner," Leon said, moving to the window to look out at the sprawling garden where the wedding tent was being set up. "Tell me who everyone is. Who is the threat? Who is the ally? Give me the intel." Livia sat on the edge of the bed. "My mother is the general. She hates anything she can't control. My Aunt Martha is the spy. She asks questions until you trip up. Clara is sweet but self-absorbed. And my cousin Roberto? He's a banker. He thinks he knows everything about money. He'll try to humiliate you if he thinks you're poor." Leon smiled, a predatory glint entering his amber eyes. "A banker who thinks he knows everything? I think I'm going to enjoy meeting Roberto." He turned to Livia, unbuttoning his heavy coat to reveal a crisp white shirt underneath. Even without the suit jacket, he looked powerful. "Get changed, Livia. Tonight we go to war." The dining room of the estate was designed to intimidate. A long mahogany table stretched beneath a crystal chandelier that seemed to vibrate with the tension in the room. 12 people sat around it, the clinking of silver forks against fine china, the only punctuation in the heavy silence. Livia sat between Leon and her Aunt Martha. Across from them sat Roberto, the cousin Livia had warned Leon about. Roberto was wearing a suit that cost more than Livia made in a year, and he wore it like a weapon. He had spent the first course, a cold cucumber soup, bragging about his latest acquisition of a startup in the city. Leon ate slowly, his movements precise. He had swapped his gray coat for a simple navy blazer he had packed. It wasn't bespoke, but on him, it looked tailored. He observed the family dynamics with the detached analysis of a CEO auditing a failing subsidiary. He saw the way Cecilia, the mother, corrected Livia's posture with a sharp glance. He saw the way Livia shrank into herself, making herself small to avoid becoming a target. It made him angry, a quiet, cold anger. "So, Leon," Roberto said, wiping his mouth with a linen napkin and locking eyes with him. "Livia tells us you're a consultant. That's a very broad term. Usually it's code for unemployed or between gigs. Which is it?" The table went silent. Livia froze, her hand gripping her wine glass so hard her knuckles turned white. Leon placed his fork down gently. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "It can be a broad term. You're right, Roberto. In my case, I specialize in logistics and efficiency optimization for distressed assets." "Distressed assets?" Roberto chuckled, looking around the table for an audience. "Sounds grim. I deal in growth. High risk, high reward capital. I don't suppose a logistics guy knows much about the real market. What's your take on the current tech bubble?" "I'm thinking of shorting Marin Tech. Their CEO has been missing for a week. Stock is bound to wobble." Livia stopped breathing. She knew nothing of Marin Tech, but she knew Roberto was trying to humiliate her husband to humiliate her. Leon took a sip of water. The mention of his own company and his own absence amused him. "I wouldn't short Marin Tech if I were you, Roberto." "Oh? And why is that?" "Do you have insider info, Mr. Consultant?" Roberto sneered. "It's not insider info, it's basic market psychology," Leon said, his voice calm, authoritative, and suddenly dominating the room. "The CEO isn't missing. He's likely strategizing. Silence in leadership often precedes a major product launch or acquisition. If you bet against silence, you usually lose to the noise that follows. Furthermore, tech isn't about the stock price, it's about the infrastructure. You're looking at the numbers. A logistics man looks at the foundation. Marin Tech's foundation is unshakable. Roberto blinked. The specificity and confidence of the answer threw him off balance. He tried to pivot. Well, that's a quaint theory. But tell me, does this logistics work pay well? Livia has always had expensive tastes for someone in her position. Roberto, Clara, the bride, admonished weakly. It pays enough, Leon said, his voice dropping lower, becoming harder. He turned to look at Livia, his expression softening into something that looked terrifyingly like love. It pays enough that I can promise you this. Livia will never want for anything. Not for comfort, not for security, and certainly not for respect. He turned back to Roberto. Wealth isn't just about liquidity, Roberto. It's about not having to prove your value to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. The silence that followed was total. Aunt Martha's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Cecilia stared at Leon as if he had just spoken a different language. Roberto opened his mouth, closed it, and then took a long drink of wine. He had lost. He didn't know how, but he had been outmaneuvered by a man in a cheap blazer. Under the table, Leon felt a hand brush his knee. He looked down. Livia's hand was resting there, squeezing gently. He looked at her. Her eyes were shining with tears she refused to shed. It was a look of profound gratitude. For the first time in his life, Leon felt a surge of pride that had nothing to do with a quarterly earning report. He had protected her, and he liked it. The ordeal of dinner ended, and they retreated to the guest room. The moment the door clicked shut, Livia exhaled a breath she seemed to have been holding for 3 hours. She slumped against the doorframe, sliding down until she was sitting on the floor, her head in her hands. "You were amazing," she mumbled through her hands. Nobody has ever shut Roberto up like that." He looked like a fish gasping for air. Leon loosened his tie and sat on the edge of the bed. "He's a bully. Bullies are easy to dismantle. You just have to show them that their weapons, money, status, snark, don't work on you." Livia looked up at him. "But they do work on me. That's the problem. I feel so small here, Leon, like I'm 12 years old again and I broke Mom's favorite vase." Leon walked over to her and offered a hand. She took it, and he pulled her up. He didn't let go immediately. "You aren't small, Livia. You work harder than anyone at that table. You have more empathy in your little finger than your mother has in her entire body. Don't mistake their arrogance for superiority." The air between them grew charged. They were standing very close. The room was dimly lit by a bedside lamp. Outside, crickets chirped in the rhythmic hum of the countryside. Livia looked at his lips. For a second, the lie vanished. She wasn't paying him. He wasn't pretending. She just wanted him. "We should sleep," Livia whispered, her voice husky. "Right." Leon cleared his throat, stepping back. "The wall." They constructed the great wall of pillows down the center of the queen-sized bed. Livia changed into oversized pajamas in the bathroom, while Leon stripped down to his undershirt and boxers, turning off the light before she came back out. They lay in the dark, separated by a barrier of feathers and cotton. But Leon could hear her breathing. He could sense the heat of her body inches away. "Leon?" Her voice drifted over the pillows. "Yeah? Why did you really come? You could have taken the money and ran, or just said no. Why help a stranger?" Leon stared at the ceiling, tracing the shadows of the fan blades. Why had he come? "My life. Back in the city," Leon started, carefully choosing his words. "It's very loud. Everyone wants something. Everyone is selling something. When I saw you on that platform, you were the only honest thing I'd seen in months. You were desperate, yes, but you were real. I guess I wanted to be around something real for a while." "I'm glad you did," she whispered. "Good night, Leon." "Good night, Livia." Leon closed his eyes, but sleep didn't come for a long time. He was thinking about the fact that tomorrow was the wedding, and after that, Sunday. And then, he would have to go back to being a billionaire, and she would go back to being a waitress. The thought made his chest ache with a heaviness he couldn't explain. He was the husband by tomorrow, but he was terrified of becoming the stranger by Monday. Saturday morning arrived with chaos. Livia woke up to the sound of shouting downstairs. She found Leon already awake, fully dressed, sitting in the armchair reading a newspaper he must have found. "What's happening?" she asked, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "It sounds like the florist canceled," Leon said calmly. "And the sound system for the ceremony blew a fuse." Livia groaned. "Mother's going to go nuclear. This is exactly what I was afraid of. If the wedding isn't perfect, she'll take it out on Clara, and then on me." They went downstairs. The scene was apocalyptic. Clara was sobbing on the sofa. Cecilia was screaming into a phone. The wedding planner looked like he was about to faint. "No hydrangeas?" Cecilia shrieked. "What do you mean the truck broke down? Get another truck. I don't care if you have to carry them on your back." Leon watched the scene for a moment. He assessed the variables. It was 9 a.m. The wedding was at 4 p.m. He stepped forward, touching Livia's shoulder. "Trust me? What are you doing?" "Fixing it." Leon walked into the center of the storm. "Cecilia," he said, his voice cutting through the noise. Cecilia whipped around. "Not now, Leon. Unless you have a van full of white hydrangeas in your pocket. Get out of the way." "I don't have a van," Leon said. "But I have a contact. Give me the phone." It wasn't a request. It was a command. Cecilia was so shocked she handed him her mobile. Leon dialed a number from memory. It was the personal number of the owner of the largest luxury logistics company in the country, a man who owed Leon a massive favor for a software patent dispute Leon had settled amicably. "Arturo," Leon said into the phone, turning his back to the room. "It's an old friend." "Yes, Leon. Look, I need a favor. I need 500 white hydrangeas and a professional audio setup delivered to the coordinates I'm sending you within 3 hours. Yes, I know it's impossible. That's why I called you." "Put it on my tab." "The usual one." He hung up and handed the phone back to a stunned Cecilia. "They will be here by noon," Leon said. "Go help Clara with her makeup." The room stared at him. "Who are you?" Aunt Martha squinted, her suspicion radar pinging wildly. "A logistics consultant has contacts who can airlift flowers on a Saturday morning." Leon smiled, a charming, disarming grin that hid everything. "In my line of work, Martha, you learn that impossible is just a lack of proper motivation. I called in a favor from a vendor we helped save last year. They owed me. It was a half-truth. The best kind of lie." Livia watched him, her heart hammering against her ribs. She saw the way he commanded the room. It wasn't just confidence, it was power. She felt a flicker of unease. Who was this man? He fit into this world of high stakes and luxury too easily. He wasn't just a reader of books on a subway platform. She pulled him aside into the kitchen. "Leon," she whispered urgently. "Who was that on the phone? You can't afford that. Those flowers will cost thousands." Leon looked at her. He wanted to tell her. The truth was right there, on the tip of his tongue. "I'm Leon Marin. I could buy this entire town." But he saw the fear in her eyes. Not fear of him, but fear of the unknown. If he told her now, the dynamic would shatter. She would see the money, not the man. She would think he was mocking her poverty with his wealth. "Don't worry about the money," Leon said softly, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I have some savings, and like I said, he owed me a favor. Let's just get through the wedding, okay?" Livia searched his face. She saw kindness. She decided to trust him, even though the math didn't add up. "Okay," she said. "But you are officially the hero of the day. My mother might actually smile at you." "I don't want her smile," Leon said, his voice intense. "I just want yours." The kitchen door swung open. "Livia!" It was Clara. "Come on, we need to get ready." Livia was pulled away, leaving Leon alone in the kitchen. He let out a long breath. He was playing a dangerous game. The flowers would arrive in a truck marked with a high-end luxury event company. Someone might recognize the logo. Someone might ask questions. He checked his phone. He had to make sure the invoice was buried, hidden from anyone who might look. But as he stood there, he realized something else. He wasn't doing this to maintain the cover. He was doing it because seeing Livia panicked hurt him physically. He was falling in love with her. And that was the most dangerous variable of all. The wedding ceremony took place in the estate's garden, transformed by Leon's phone call into a paradise of white hydrangeas and soft, golden lighting. The air was thick with the scent of blooming jasmine and the expensive perfume of the guests. Livia stood at the altar as the maid of honor, wearing a pale lavender dress that hugged her frame. She looked radiant, but her eyes weren't on her sister, the bride. They were scanning the crowd, locking onto Leon. He sat in the third row, looking devastatingly handsome in his navy blazer, now paired with a fresh shirt he had miraculously pressed himself. He wasn't looking at the bride either. He was looking at Livia. As Clara and her fiancé exchanged vows, standard promises of for better or worse, for richer or poorer, Livia felt a lump form in her throat. Those words, they were exactly what she and Leon were living out in reverse. They had started with poorer, bonded over worse, and were currently faking the better. "I promise to be your shelter," the groom said. Livia looked at Leon. He had been her shelter for the last 24 hours. He had shielded her from Roberto's insults, from her mother's criticism, and from her own insecurities. He was a stranger she had bought for a weekend, yet he treated her with more respect than men she had dated for years. The officiant said, "You may kiss the bride." Applause erupted. Petals were thrown. But in the midst of the celebration, Leon and Livia shared a private, silent exchange across the aisle. It was a look of shared conspiracy, yes, but underneath it, something terrified and tender was blooming. As the guests moved toward the reception tent, Leon intercepted Livia near the punch bowl. "You look beautiful," he said. His voice was low, meant only for her. It wasn't a compliment. It sounded like a confession. Livia smoothed her dress nervously. "It's just a bridesmaid dress. I feel like a giant cupcake." "Then you are the most elegant cupcake in the history of baking," Leon teased, a small smirk playing on his lips. "The flowers," Livia whispered, looking around at the lavish arrangements Leon had secured. "My mother is taking credit for them, of course. But Clara knows. She's so happy, Leon." "Thank you. I didn't do it for Clara," Leon said, his eyes darkening slightly. Livia's heart skipped a beat. "Leon, we need to be careful. We're getting too good at this. Sunday is tomorrow. We have to remember this isn't real." Leon stepped closer, invading her personal space just enough to make her breath hitch. "Define real, Livia. Because the way you held my hand at dinner felt pretty real. The way we talked last night felt real." Before she could answer, the wedding planner bustled over with a headset. "Maid of honor, we need you for the speeches. Chop chop." Livia was swept away, leaving Leon standing there, the ache in his chest growing. He checked his phone. Another frantic text from his board. "Stock dropping on rumors of illness. Need a statement ASAP." He shoved the phone deep into his pocket. Let it drop. He would trade his entire portfolio just to keep that look in Livia's eyes for one more hour. The reception was in full swing. The band, also upgraded thanks to the sound system Leon had sourced, was playing a slow, soulful jazz number. The champagne flowed freely, loosening tongues and lowering inhibitions. Even Cecilia was in a good mood, having received compliments on the flowers from the town mayor. She had momentarily stopped terrorizing Livia. "Dance with me," Leon said, appearing at Livia's elbow. He didn't ask. He extended his hand. Livia hesitated. "I don't know how to waltz properly. I'll step on your feet. I'll lead. You just follow." They moved to the dance floor. Leon placed one hand on her waist, his grip firm and warm. Livia placed her hand on his shoulder. They began to move. It wasn't a perfect waltz, but it was fluid. Leon moved with a natural grace, guiding her effortlessly. For a moment, the room blurred. The judging eyes of Aunt Martha, the sneer of Roberto, the expectations of her mother. It all faded into background noise. "You're a good dancer for a logistics consultant," Livia murmured, resting her forehead against his chin for a second. "I took lessons," Leon lied. He had attended ballroom etiquette classes as a child in boarding school. "I wanted to be prepared in case I met a girl who loved old maps." Livia pulled back to look at him. Her eyes were shimmering. "Stop it. You can't keep saying things like that." "Why not?" "Because," she whispered, her voice cracking. I don't have enough money to pay you for the extra romance package. Leon stopped moving. People danced around them, but they were still. I told you, he said fiercely. This one is on the house. The intensity was too much. Livia broke eye contact. I need air. It's too hot in here. She pulled away and walked briskly toward the garden exit. Leon followed. They ended up on a stone bench near the edge of the property, overlooking a valley bathed in moonlight. The stars were out in full force, a diamond dust scattered across the velvet black. Livia sat down, hugging her arms. Leon took off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. It smelled of him, cedar, crisp linen, and something masculine and expensive. I don't want to go back, Livia admitted to the darkness. Not to the party, and not to my life on Monday. I hate my apartment. I hate waiting tables for people who don't look me in the eye. I hate feeling like I'm constantly drowning. Leon sat beside her. Then change it. With what money, Leon? With what opportunity? Real life isn't like this weekend. In real life, I'm nobody. You are not nobody, Leon said, his voice rising with frustration. He wanted to tell her he could change her life with a snap of his fingers. He could pay her rent for a decade. He could buy the restaurant she worked at and give it to her. But that would be charity. And Livia was too proud for charity. She needed to be seen, not saved. Livia, Leon turned to her, capturing her face in his hands. You are smart. You are resilient. You have a fire in you that your family tries to extinguish. But I see it. You could do anything. I could kiss you, she whispered, the words escaping before she could stop them. Leon froze. Then, slowly, he leaned in. Yes, you could. Their lips met. It wasn't a theatrical, movie star kiss. It was tentative, soft, tasting of champagne and longing. Then it deepened, becoming desperate. It was a kiss of two people trying to pause time, trying to rewrite reality. For that minute, under the stars, Leon Marin wasn't a billionaire, and Livia wasn't a waitress. They were just two souls who had found their matching piece. Then a voice cut through the night like a shard of glass. Well, 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 isn't this touching? They broke apart. Standing 10 feet away, illuminated by the path lights, was Roberto. He was swaying slightly, a glass of whiskey in one hand and his smartphone in the other. Leon stood up immediately, placing himself between Livia and her cousin. Go back inside, Roberto. You're drunk. I might be drunk, Roberto slurred, a malicious grin spreading across his face. But at least I'm not a fraud. Livia stood up, clutching Leon's jacket. What are you talking about? Leave us alone. Roberto laughed. It was an ugly, wet sound. I knew something was off. The confidence, the shoes, the favors from luxury vendors. So I did some digging. Reverse image search is a wonderful tool, Livia. You should try it sometime. He held up his phone. The screen was bright in the darkness. I took a picture of your husband at dinner, Roberto sneered. And guess who popped up? Not Leon Vane, logistics consultant. Leon's jaw tightened. He calculated the distance to Roberto. He could snatch the phone, but it was too late. The truth was out. Let's go inside, Roberto said, turning toward the tent. I think the family needs to hear a toast. Roberto, stop! Livia cried, grabbing his arm. He shook her off violently. No, you think you're better than me? Bringing this liar into our house? Roberto marched into the tent. Leon and Livia ran after him, but the music had already stopped. Roberto had grabbed the microphone from the band leader. The feedback screeched, silencing the room. Ladies and gentlemen, Roberto shouted, I have a special announcement, a toast to the maid of honor and her husband. The room turned to look. Cecilia frowned. Clara looked confused. Roberto pointed a shaking finger at Leon, who had just entered the tent with Livia pale beside him. We have a celebrity in our midst, Roberto yelled, his voice dripping with venomous sarcasm. Livia didn't marry a consultant. Oh no, she didn't marry anyone, because this man isn't Leon Vane. He looked at his phone and read aloud, mocking every word. This is Leon Marin, CEO of Marin Technologies. Net worth, $4.2 billion. Currently missing from New York City. A gasp rippled through the room. It started as a murmur and grew into a roar of whispers. Cecilia stood up, her face white. "What? Roberto, what are you saying?" "I'm saying," Roberto shouted, enjoying his moment of triumph, "that Livia hired him, or he picked her up. It's a sham. She brought a billionaire stranger to our wedding and lied to all of us." He turned to Livia, who looked like she might faint. "How much did you pay him, Livia? Or did you pay him in other ways?" "Enough," Leon's voice boomed. It wasn't a shout. It was a command that carried the weight of authority he used to control boardrooms. He stepped forward, the crowd parting for him instinctively. He didn't look at Roberto. He walked straight to Livia. He looked at her face. She wasn't looking at Roberto. She was looking at him. Her eyes were wide, filled with shock, confusion, and a dawn of realization that was swiftly turning into horror. "Is it true?" Livia whispered, her voice trembling so much it was barely audible. Are you him?" Leon looked at her. He could lie. He could say Roberto was crazy. He could spin one last story. But he looked at the woman who had offered him her last $200. He couldn't lie to her again. "Yes," Leon said softly. "I am Leon Marine." Livia took a step back, as if he had slapped her. The betrayal in her eyes was worse than any anger. You let me offer you money," she stammered, tears spilling over. "You let me worry about the train ticket. You let me feel guilty about the flowers. You watched me struggle, and you just played a game. Was this funny to you? Was I just a poor little project for your weekend amusement?" "Livia, no." Leon reached for her. "Don't touch me," she screamed. The sound silenced the entire tent. "You're not my husband. You're not even my friend. You're just a liar with a lot of money." She turned and ran. She ran out of the tent, past the stunned guests, into the darkness of the driveway. "Livia!" Leon shouted, starting to chase her. "Let her go." Cecilia blocked his path, her face a mask of fury mixed with greedy curiosity. "Mr. Marin, is it true? Are you really—" Leon stopped. He looked at Cecilia. He looked at Roberto, who was smirking. He looked at the superficial, judgmental faces of the people who had made Livia feel small her entire life. A cold fury settled over him. "Yes," Leon said, his voice like ice. "I am a billionaire. I could buy this estate and turn it into a parking lot by tomorrow morning." Cecilia's mouth snapped shut. "But your daughter," Leon continued, his voice shaking with suppressed emotion. "Livia is worth more than everything I own. And you—" He looked around the room with disgust. "None of you deserve her." He pushed past Cecilia and ran into the night toward the main road. But the driveway was empty. A taxi that had just dropped off late guests was pulling away in the distance. Livia was gone. Monday morning in Manhattan was usually a symphony of ambition for Leon Marin. Today, it felt like a funeral dirge. He sat in his office on the 54th floor, overlooking the city that looked like a circuit board from this height. His assistant, Marcus, was reading off a schedule. A meeting with the Asian investors at 10 Wong, lunch with the senator at 12:30, and the board wants a formal explanation regarding the Serra Verde incident by EOD. "Marcus," Leon interrupted, swiveling his chair around to face the glass. "Yes, sir?" "Cancel it." "Cancel? The lunch?" "Cancel everything. Clear the week. Clear the month." Marcus went silent. "Sir, the stock is already volatile after the rumors. If you disappear again, I'm not disappearing." Leon stood up. He walked to the reflection in the glass. He saw a billionaire, a titan of industry, a man who could buy islands. But in the reflection, he also saw a liar. He saw the look on Livia's face when she realized she had been the punchline to a joke he hadn't intended to tell. He thought about the $200 she had offered him. That crumpled envelope meant more to her than his entire portfolio meant to him. She had offered her safety net to a stranger because she loved her family, even though they didn't deserve it. "I have been building the wrong things," Leon muttered. He turned to his assistant. "Get the legal team in here and call the PR department. I'm going to make a restructuring announcement. And Marcus?" "Yes, sir?" "Find out where Livia works. Don't contact her. Just find the location." Leon Marin was done hiding. It was time to make the biggest investment of his life. For Livia, the city felt louder and colder than before. She had returned on Sunday night, taking a bus alone, ignoring the barrage of texts from her mother, who had suddenly gone from criticizing her to demanding she secure the asset, and the confused messages from Clara. She went back to her shift at the Rusty Spoon, the downtown diner where she worked. She tied her apron, picked up her notepad, and put on her customer service smile. But she felt hollow. Every time the door chimed, her heart jumped. Every time she saw a gray coat, her breath hitched. "Livia, table 4 needs a refill," her manager Al barked. "On it," she said, her voice dull. She poured coffee for a businessman who didn't look up from his phone. She wiped tables. She counted tips. It was the same life she had before the weekend, but now it felt unbearable. She had tasted what it was like to be seen, to be protected, to be understood. She missed Leon, not the billionaire. She missed the man who built a wall of pillows. She missed the man who lied about hydrangeas to save her sister's wedding. She hated him for lying, but she hated herself more for missing him. On Wednesday evening, the diner was quiet. The small TV in the corner, usually tuned to sports, was on a news channel. "Breaking news," the anchor announced. "Shockwaves in the tech world today as Leon Marin, CEO of Marin Technologies, announces a radical shift in his company's direction." Livia froze. She looked up at the screen. There he was. He was wearing a suit, standing at a podium. He looked tired. He looked serious. "Effective immediately," Leon said on the screen, his voice tinny through the diner's speakers. "I am divesting 60% of my personal shares. The proceeds will go into a new trust, the Open Hand Foundation. Its sole purpose will be to provide grants, not loans, grants, to working-class individuals and small business owners who are one paycheck away from crisis." The diner went quiet. Even Al stopped wiping the counter. "I spent years accumulating wealth," Leon continued, looking straight into the camera. It felt like he was looking right at Livia. "But I recently learned that the most valuable currency in the world isn't crypto or gold. It's dignity. It's the ability to stand tall when the world tries to make you small. I want to invest in that." Livia dropped a spoon. It clattered loudly on the floor. He had given away billions. Because of what she said? Because of the $200? "Crazy," Al muttered, shaking his head. "Guy loses his mind and gives away half his empire." "No," Livia whispered, tears pricking her eyes. "He didn't lose his mind. He found it." 2 days later, Friday night, the diner was bustling. Livia was rushing between tables, balancing 3 plates of burgers. The door chime rang. She didn't look up. She dropped the plates at table 6, extra pickles and joy, and turned to run back to the kitchen. Then she saw him. He was standing by the entrance. He wasn't wearing an Italian suit. He wasn't wearing the expensive navy blazer. He was wearing jeans, boots, and the same worn gray coat he had worn on the subway platform. He was holding a book. The diner seemed to tilt on its axis. Livia walked over to him. Her heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She stopped 3 feet away. "Table for 1?" she asked, her voice shaking. "I'm looking for a job," Leon said. His voice was steady, but his amber eyes were pleading. "I hear you're hiring a husband, or at least a partner." Livia crossed her arms. She needed to be strong. "I can't afford you. I checked your net worth online. It's out of my budget." "The price has dropped significantly," Leon said, taking a step closer. "I gave most of it away. The board is furious. My lawyers think I'm having a breakdown. I kept enough to live comfortably, but the empire is gone, Livia." Livia stared at him. "You gave it away? Why?" "Because it was in the way," Leon said simply. "It was a wall between me and reality, between me and you." He reached into his pocket. Livia flinched, expecting a ring box. Instead, he pulled out a crumpled white envelope. He held it out to her. "What is this?" she asked. "Open it." She took the envelope. Inside were $200, the same bills she had given him, or ones just like them. "I'm returning your investment," Leon said softly. "With interest." "This is just the principal," she said, confused. "The interest?" Leon said, dropping to one knee right there on the greasy linoleum floor of the diner. Is me. The diner went silent. Customers turned in their booths. Al leaned over the counter, chewing a toothpick. Livia, Leon said, looking up at her, I lied to you about who I was, and I will regret that for the rest of my life. But everything I felt, everything I did for you, that was the only truth I've lived in 10 years. I don't want to be a billionaire alone in a penthouse. I want to be the man who eats burnt toast with you. I want to be the man who helps you look at old maps. I want to be real. Tears streamed down Livia's face. You're an idiot, she sobbed, laughed. You gave away billions? I'd give away the rest, he said, if it meant you'd trust me again. Livia looked at the envelope in her hand. Then she looked at the man on his knees, the man who had defended her honor against her family, the man who had listened. She dropped the envelope on the table next to them. Get up, she whispered. Leon stood up, looking uncertain. Livia grabbed the lapels of his cheap gray coat and pulled him down into a kiss. It was messy, salty with tears, and absolutely perfect. The diner erupted in applause. Al rang the service bell repeatedly in celebration. When they broke apart, Livia wiped her eyes. You're hired, she said. But you have to start at the bottom. Probationary period. Leon smiled, the first genuine unburdened smile she had ever seen on him. I accept the terms. 1 year later. The wedding was small. There were no white hydrangeas airlifted by luxury logistics. There were wildflowers picked from a nearby field. It was held in the backyard of a small, charming house on the outskirts of the city. A house bought with comfortable savings, not billionaire capital. Clara was there, happy and relaxed. Even Cecilia was there, subdued and strangely respectful. She had learned that while Leon wasn't a titan of industry anymore, he was still a man who commanded respect without saying a word. And Roberto? Roberto wasn't invited. Livia wore a simple white dress. Leon wore a suit that fit him perfectly because Livia had picked it out. As they danced on the wooden deck under a string of Edison bulbs, Livia rested her head on his shoulder. You know, she whispered, my mother still thinks you're crazy for selling the company shares. Let her think it, Leon said, spinning her slowly. I made the best trade of my life. He looked around at the small gathering, the laughter, the food on the table, and the woman in his arms. He had traded a kingdom of cold numbers for a life of warm moments. He had traded fear for love. I need a husband by tomorrow, Livia joked, echoing the words that started it all. Leon kissed her forehead. Sorry, I'm booked forever.